Evening and morning to everybody. I'm just gonna wait for everybody to join and then we can start. Okay, welcome to our session on AI in education and a sustainable future. Uh, we are going to have a very informative and a very interactive session. It's a panel of three of our Global Schools alumni. But before we get into that, I would give the floor to Amanda so that she can share some announcements before we start.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We're really excited to have you for this session. Just some quick announcements of upcoming things before we jump into the main content today. So for those of you that are joining the Ages of Globalization live lecture series, which is happening every Tuesday at 8 a.m. ET with Professor Jeffrey Sachs, we still have a few more sessions to go. We have three more left. However, this week, Professor Sachs had to change his schedule. So instead of Tuesday, the 24th, he'll be doing his lecture tomorrow at 8 a.m., Monday, the 23rd. So that's an important change. The other thing upcoming is we will be having a session for the ECOSOC Youth Forum on Tuesday, April 14th at 8 a.m. Eastern Time as well. If you have any students that would be interested in presenting, specifically the topic and the SDG under review is SDG 7, renewable energy, please reach out to me so we can try and feature their work at that session. I think that's it from my side. So thank you so much, and back over to Noah. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Okay, so we are going to be starting our panel discussion on artificial intelligence, how that's reshaping education, and how that's affecting everybody in the classroom from administration to the student body. We're going to talk about what that means for the future of learning. But before we begin with our panelists, I would just quickly like to summarize everything that we've been going through, right? So AI, I'm pretty sure, has affected all of us all over the world. It is basically a set of hardware and softwares that have the capacity to learn, think, and help us solve problems, right? The way AI has impacted teaching is that on the one hand, we have personalized learning, we have a little bit of teaching assistant. AI can help us focus more on building relationships, inspiring creativity, and helping students think critically. We can basically plug in anything that we require, anything that needs a lot of time for us to do, and AI can help us with that. And in the meantime, we can look at more of the skill sets that students require from us as teachers. On the other hand, we have student learning. Now, since students have AI on their almost every platform, their access to knowledge, information, aid is available. So it's like having a tutor 24/7 available at your, at your request, and everybody can access information much faster, right? So, where we have all these innovations, all these different developmental things taking place, there are some backdraws of AI as well. And then there are also some specific cases in which we can use AI for very particular problems or to get equal rights to education to everybody all across the world, right? Um, AI can combat, for example, like resources all over the world. Anybody who's any school system that has limited library resources, or anybody that has just general, even human resources in a school, can now access things like explanations, examples, tutoring, whatever you need, right? And AI does help balance fairness concerns all across education. But we'll hear much more about that from our panelists, who I would like to introduce to you all. So, over here we have three of our panelists who are Global Schools alumni. We have Sumaya from Turkey, we have Kyla, and we have Joanna, right? To further introduce them, Kyla is going to go first. She grew up in the United States and graduated from the University of Central Missouri. She is a teacher librarian and she manages K2 library and teaches students on all ages. She teaches all ages, all students of various ages, different research skills. We have Joanna, who will be talking about AI and education for sustainable development. She is a Master's of Arts in English Language, Literature, and Linguistics. She is a Microsoft Certified Innovative Educator. She is a Magic School's AI Certified Trainer and a graduate of the Solutionary Micro Credential Program. Then we have Sumaya from Turkey, who is a science teacher, an education researcher, and a UN SDSN Global Schools mentor from Turkey. She has over 16 years of teaching experience, and she focuses on integrating AI and sustainable development into education. Right? So, without further ado, we'll go to Kyla, and she will talk us through AI and ethical use.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I will go ahead and share my screen. And give me just a second. All right. Can you see it? Or not yet? Oh, here. Window, this one. Okay, so perfect. So I will be talking today about the ethics behind AI, how I integrated this into some of my classes, and mostly highlighting a specific lesson that I did with my students. So a little bit more about me. I am Kayla. I grew up in the US, like she said, and I have a Master of Library and Information Science. I am a librarian and a teacher. I was a graduate of cohort 7, so relatively new still. And my main goal is that I am trying to teach my students how to be ethical learners. So, what I did and what I'll be talking about specifically today was part of my MYP3 ethics class. This is built into our CARE program for anyone who teaches the IB. If you don't have the IB, it's basically grade 8. The students are about 13 to 14 years old. This is one lesson per week, so I don't get them for very long. I only get them for about 40 minutes. Class periods are 45 minutes, but everyone knows that they come in and they mess around a little while. So about 40 minutes. This particular unit was around 5 weeks long, and we focused on 3 ethical aspects of AI and connected them explicitly to the SDGs. So we focused specifically on the environment, bias, and copyright. So the first thing that we talked about was environmental. The first thing that I wanted to discuss with the students is that AI isn't always bad. I think right now there is an expectation or a connotation that AI is bad, it's taking over the world, don't use it. That's not necessarily true. It does have its downfalls, but it can be used for good. So an example of this that we discussed in class is the World Wildlife Fund is using AI to track deforestation and to predict where wildfires are going to start, which is an incredible thing. But again, has its downfalls. So part of that is that training GPT-3 used 700,000 liters of water, and that data centers use between 10 to 50 times more water than commercial buildings. Now, we discussed with my students, why is that range so huge? 10 to 50 times. Why is that so massive? Why do we not know the exact numbers? We talked about businesses and having ethical businesses. And part of having ethical practices around AI is transparency. And it's really hard to get accurate data when it comes to AI because businesses don't want people to know. They don't want people to know that they're using 50 times more water than commercial buildings for the data centers. They say, oh, yeah, we're using 10. So we discussed a lot about transparency and why it's important. The SDG connection to this was SDG 6, ensuring safe and affordable drinking water for all people. That also discusses eliminating the dumping of hazardous materials into water and also increasing water recycling. We discussed why this is so difficult for data centers. Once the water is used to cool the data centers, that water can no longer be used. It can't be reused because it has those hazardous materials in it. We also talked about SDG 13, taking urgent action to combat climate change. Part of what we discussed as a class was, what does this look like? What does affordable drinking water for all people look like? How can we combat the effects of these data centers by ensuring affordable drinking water for all people. What does that actually look like? The second thing that we discussed was bias. This is something that is very, very important when it comes to AI. This was a way that we discussed, how does AI learn? For anyone who doesn't know, basically what happens in the very, very short layman's terms is AI learns by reading massive amounts of data and then computing the statistical averages. Basically, what that means is it doesn't give you what's the correct answer. It gives you what the most likely correct answer is. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's correct. So I asked my students, work with a partner. If you ask AI to create an image of a person, what do you think it would look like? Most of my students said it's going to be a white man. He's probably going to have like a suit on, and he's going to look like every single person's grandpa. So this is what it came up with. And because I am in a library, I had my students make a story. What's his name? Think about your averages. Think about the average person. What is this gentleman's name? What do you think his job is? We decided this guy's name is probably John. He probably works in finance. He has a golden retriever and a wife and 2.5 kids. You know, that's what this looks like for the average in our class. Now, the fun part though was after we did this, okay, open up ChatGPT on your own computer, ask it to create a person for you and see what it gives you. And this was really interesting to do with my students because nobody had this particular person. Everyone's was slightly different. Most of them looked very similar. There was only one female that was made, and there were only 2 people of color. And we discussed why. A lot of what I did with this unit was bringing back to why. Why is it doing this? Why does it think that this is what the average person looks like? The people who, or excuse me, the students who had the person of color that was created, why? Funny enough, only one of them was a person of color. And it's just, we discussed, okay, how is it learning? How does it learn about you as a person? Whatever you input into it is what it uses to create your outputs. And it was very, very interesting for the students. They really enjoyed this particular activity. But then we also discussed, of course, the connection to the SDGs. We related this to SDG 12, empowering and promoting inclusion of all people and eliminating discriminatory practices and policies. With this, we discussed people with disabilities. About 16% of the global population has what is considered a significant disability. And of course, 16% is not the average. So because it is not the average, AI does not include people with disabilities in their outputs. Again, why? What does this look like in our daily life? So what I wanted them to think about was, how can we use AI to be more useful for those with disabilities? So what we did is a couple of my students, or all of the students really, but these are just a couple examples, create an app of a way that AI can be used to help those with disabilities. So the first one is called DELP. This was actually created by a student who who struggles with dyscalculia, and she created the outline of an app where you can highlight specific words or numbers that you're struggling with, and DELP will create either highlight them or put them in a font that will, or is easier to identify for those with these learning disabilities. The other one is Speakable, which understands speech impediments. We learned that a lot of hiring practices right now for those with speech impediments, they're actually discluded from these hiring practices because the AI can't recognize the words that they are saying. So what this app does, the idea that these students came up with, was that a person with a speech impediment can speak into it and it will translate it, for lack of better terminology, into understandable speech. And this can help eliminate those discriminatory practices in hiring practices against those with these disabilities. And this was very, very, and it was a really interesting activity to see what my students were coming up with and what they identified as a disability. And it was really cool, really interesting one. The next part that we talked about, our transition, I guess I could say, into copyright was to talk about citations. Again, I am a librarian by trade, so a lot of my job talks about research skills and teaching research skills to my students. So we discussed academic integrity. Why do we need to cite AI? You do have to cite AI. I'm just going to shout it to the rooftops. You have to cite AI. If you use AI, you have to cite it. We discussed why is that. We discussed linking back to biases. We talked about hallucinations, which is basically when AI doesn't know the answer, or again, works on the statistical probability, is that the most likely answer doesn't necessarily mean that it's correct. And what that is, it's called a hallucination. AI gives you something that's not necessarily correct. A lot of the sources, if you go to, for example, ChatGPT and ask it, find me a scholarly source about this topic, it will just make up a source because that source doesn't actually exist. This is called a hallucination. So we discussed using AI to find sources, but not using it as a source. And this was sort of a jumping off point to discuss copyright, which again is part of my job as a librarian. Previously, we had talked about how AI learns by reading those massive amounts of data, but where does it get the data? And unfortunately, there's an AI, it's called Claude. It's very commonly used in education, but there was a report that found that they used more than 7 million pirated books to train Claude. The owner of Claude tried to say this fell under fair use, and judges said, no, it doesn't. So we talked about that. We also focused on AI-generated art. In 2023, there were 10 artists who sued various AI platforms for using their art to train their bots without permission. The SDG that we connected this to was SDG 8, which is achieving full and productive employment and decent work for all. This might seem like a little bit of a stretch, but we decided as a class, people whose works are used to train AI should be paid for that. And the other side of that, if AI creates all the art, where does that leave the artists? And that is a problem. So to put it all together, I asked my students to choose one ethical dilemma, so copyright, bias, or environmental aspects, and put all of the information that we have learned into a poster that could be hanging in the hallway. That way, when students pass by it, they have something that they can look at. Part of that was that you have to explain both the pros and the cons of AI, because again, AI doesn't necessarily mean bad. There are good things that can be used or come from AI. We just need to use it correctly. I also wanted them to explain the SDG connection and how we can work towards change. So these are a couple examples of what my students came up with. The first one here on the left is about copyright, talks about infringement laws, use of pirated content, and it relates to the SDGs. The one in the middle talks about bias. What is the issue? They used real examples. One of the examples there is that there is a bias about or in the criminal justice system in the United States, because there was an AI bot that was trained and it found that Black and African American people had a higher likelihood of being arrested than white people, which if you're from the US, you know that's just very common anyway. But this was built into an AI bot, and that's a problem. So on the right-hand side of that, they also have possible solutions. Stereotypes should be replaced. One should focus on person's individual characteristics. Institutionalizing fairness supports the culture of diversity. And that sentence right there was, yes, okay, they got it. They understand. And then again, on the far right side here is an example of environmental pros and cons of using AI, and basically discussed what we talked about. And then they also included a separate graph highlighting the use of AI. And all of this put together, there were more examples as well, but I chose these three because I felt like they highlighted or explained it the way that I wanted them to, if that makes sense. Like the understanding was there. And so that is what we discussed in this unit. Ultimately, I think that it went so well. I do have plans to adjust it ever so slightly for next year. But for the first year of teaching this, I felt like my students understood it. And now when I ask them, or I guess I should say when they ask me, Miss, can I use AI for this? I'm like, what do you think? And they're like, no, okay, I'll Google it first. So even though lead a horse to water, but it has made an impact, which is very exciting. So that is what I've got. And I will just go ahead and stop sharing that.
Great, thank you so much for that. Whatever questions we get regarding your presentation, we'll ask them at the end. Moving on, we'll go to Joanna, who's going to be talking about AI and education for sustainable development.
Okay, thank you very much. Congratulations, Kayla. The topic of my presentation is a little bit different. So let me share the screen first. Okay, here we go. AI and education for sustainable development, transforming learning. And first, I would like you to have a look at some quotes, and I would like you to pay attention to them because we are going to come back to at least one of them at the very end of my presentation. They might seem to be a little provocative, but this is what my aim is here. So technology will never replace great teachers, but technology in the hands of great teachers can be transformational. Artificial intelligence will not replace teachers, but teachers who use AI will replace those who don't. And the very last one here, the real risk is not that students will use AI. The real risk is that education will pretend AI does not exist. And I would also like you to ask yourself these questions. How many hours per week do you spend preparing materials for your classes? And what if AI could cut that time by 50% or even more? And the last one, what if AI could help students understand complex global issues like climate change or inequality? SDG problems are really complex, so we can have topics like climate change, biodiversity, energy transitions, and many others. And all of these issues require systems thinking, interdisciplinary learning, problem solving, and global awareness. And believe me, AI can help us teachers in simplifying complex topics, creating personalized explanations, generating activities quickly, visualizing systems and relationships, and many, many others, which I won't have time to talk about today, but I have chosen some to just to give you a clue what AI can be really used to make our teachers' life easier. So first, what AI can actually do for us teachers. It can act as teaching assistant. So for example, it can help us with lesson planning, creating activities or worksheets. AI can be also our research assistant and help us with summarizing reports, simplifying scientific articles. Or it can be content creator. And this is what I use it with my student most often to create different quizzes, analyze case studies, or make some simulations. And finally, our students, a learning companion. AI can be a learning companion for our students. So it can help them with explaining concepts, brainstorming ideas, and give some feedback on their writing. And these are just a few ideas because there are really, really more. And the first thing I want to focus on, the first tool is ChatGPT. And I dare call it a universal teaching assistant because I myself use it on everyday basis to help me create different ideas and to make my lessons with my students more interesting. However, you need to remember that the quality of AI input depends on the quality of the question, or to put it more professionally, in the quality of our prompts, which I'm going to tell you about in a moment. Because, for example, we can ask ChatGPT to explain climate change to a 12-year-old using a simple analogy. And this is the prompt that I put to ChatGPT, giving also the level of English of the students, which is very important because when you give more or less the age of the students and the level of English, you will get the best results possible. And this is the question my commentors and my mentees used to ask me, the previous cohorts. Joanna, okay, we have a lot of sources, but how to put it in simple way to make our children in kindergarten or in primary school understand. So here you have one example. Of course, you may like it or not, but you can always change it. So we can always ask ChatGPT, okay, I don't really like the ideas that you ask me to imagine Earth is like a house with a blanket. Let's try something else. So we can always update it, ask for some other result. ChatGPT can be used also to create a classroom debate, for example, a classroom debate activity about sustainable cities. And this is what you get. You get the whole project, the whole outline of the lesson. And what is important, what usually teachers ask me about, you always get these learning goals if you ask ChatGPT the right prompts. So here we go, just an example. And this is the end of this lesson. So you get it step by step. You had some warm-up activities. Here we have preparation. And if your student needs some hints, you can always use these ones given by ChatGPT or choose some of your own. You can lead later on to the debate and finally make a class vote on whatever sustainable topic you need. It doesn't have to be sustainable cities. It's just an example that I've been using with my students. And now, because many teachers tell me, okay, Joanna, but how can we control ChatGPT? It works with lots of resources and students will get the responses that are not necessarily true. But we have another tool, which I want to focus on today, Notebook.lm. And this one turns documents into an interactive knowledge assistant. And I will show you the main differences between the two. So I would call ChatGPT the creative brainstormer because the sources that I tend to call it he, the sources it uses is the whole internet. So it will search everywhere in the internet to provide you with the results that will satisfy you with the prompt that you gave to it. So it generates new ideas, explanations, and content. So we can say that it's a universal teaching assistant ready to brainstorm. And the main difference between these two is that I would call Notebook.lm the strict librarian, because this one uses only the documents you upload. So if you are the teacher who are not really sure whether AI or ChatGPT exactly is the right tool to be used, I do recommend using this Notebook.lm because it works only with the documents, with the links that you upload there. I will show you in a moment where to do it. So it extracts some or summarizes and interrogates your trusted materials, which is very important difference here. So I would say that it is a focused research assistant analyzing a closed archive. So what can we do? A few examples. What can we do with this Notebook.lm? It works the same way as ChatGPT, but as I've mentioned, it is you who provides it with the right resources. So, for example, we can turn a long report into a lesson plan. So what we normally do, we just read 20, 40 pages report and extract different ideas. And usually it takes us a lot of time. So we can put into Notebook.lm prompt, for example, this one. Create a 45-minute lesson plan for secondary school students, aged 15, level of English B1+, based on this document. And Notebook.lm can generate for you lesson objectives, key concepts, discussion, questions, classroom activities, and many, many more. It all depends on the prompt that you put there. And instead of reading the whole report, you can just transform it directly into a classroom lesson and you save your time. We can also turn complex research into student-friendly explanations. So what you should do is just upload, for example, a scientific article on climate change or biodiversity loss and ask Notebook-LM, explain the key ideas from this document in a way that a 13-year-old student can understand them. Again, I would emphasize the age of the students you want to work with is important so that you get the right result that matches your classroom needs and are tailor-made. So that Notebook-LM will simplify the language, create analogies, summarize key ideas. And in this simple way, you can translate academic research into language students understand in seconds. We can also, for example, generate discussion questions. And I love this one because it's great for critical thinking. You need to upload a document about, for example, sustainable energy and ask, generate 10 critical thinking questions students could discuss in class. And I have chosen just 3 here as an example so that you can see the result. Should nuclear energy be considered sustainable? What are the trade-offs of renewable energy? Who should pay for climate action? Of course, there were many more that it generated. So it can generate questions that normally would take us lots of time to design. We can create a study guide from any document. So we can upload, for example, a UN sustainability report, climate policy article, environmental case study, really, whatever you want, whatever you need in your classroom. For example, ask it this way, create a study guide for students, including key concepts, definitions, and discussion questions. And again, Notebook-LM will generate your key terms, summaries, learning questions, and in this way, students can review complex material easily. They are updated to their level. We can also ask questions directly to the documents. So you upload, for example, a report about plastic pollution. This is the topic I've chosen, and I'm going to show you some examples of it in a moment. And ask what are the main causes of plastic pollution mentioned in the document and what solutions are proposed. And Notebook-LM answers based only on the documents that you upload there. So why do we love it as teachers? Because students can learn how to interact with sources, not just get Google answers. And finally, I think this is something that you are waiting for, what this Notebook-LM really looks like. So what you need is just your Google account. As you can see, these are the marks characteristic for Google account. You just need these little dots here, and when you click there, you have different functions possible in Google accounts. And when you have this mark, it means Notebook-LM. And this is the way it looks like. So as I've already mentioned it to you, we have this button, Add Sources. And really, it is your choice what you would like this Notebook-LM to work with. And as you can see here, I have prepared this is the screenshot from my Notebook-LM. I have prepared some ready-made material not to waste our time. So I have put 3 Word documents. I have just copied some articles from the internet and pasted there. And there are also 3 links concerning this plastic problem in the world. And for example, I wrote here such a prompt. Write 10 open questions to check the general understanding of the issues presented in the article. And again, believe me, it's very important to give the age and the level of English that your students are at. So for teenagers, level of English B1, and you get the questions on the very level concerning only the materials that you have put here. And on the right, this is something that makes magic. As far as Notebook-LM is concerned, this studio, because you can really do many things here. You can create podcast. This is this button here. You can make presentation, a video summary, mind map, reports, flashcards, infographic, data table, and what we teachers sometimes need tests as well. And as you can see, I have created some of them here, and this is what it looks like. And I will show you some examples. So this is the infographic I have asked Notebook-LM to make for my students for the sake of the use in my classroom so that the lesson was more interesting. So as you can see, it is really neatly made. You have some general info, and some pictures which are really well made, and really NotebookLM it is. You can see here at the bottom that this is the AI tool that has been used here. Another infographic, I just used a different prompt. So as you can see, there is a variety of results that you can get depending on the prompt. Again, lots of different information, pieces of information, lots of pictures, which we can change if we don't like. And I would like to show you that it is not just for the sake of us teachers, but I also use this NotebookLM with my students. I have explained them how it works, what we can do with it. And because we do lots of different international projects with my students, this is an example of one which we call Act Local, Think Global. We do it with Turkey, Spain, and Georgia. And the task of our students from this different country was to present some SDGs we agreed on prior to the meeting and present it in the aspect of our own country. So as you can see, on the left, we have SDG 6, clean water, and one of my students, Michalina, was presenting it, what it is like in Poland, or another of my students were presenting zero hunger in Poland on the basis of infographic made by means of NotebookLM. So this is just one example. Coming back to the tool itself, we can also use it for creating student-friendly visual summaries. And this is what I often do to make the lessons more interesting, because we know that these sustainable topics sometimes can be demanding and boring at the same time. So to make my students more involved, I do something like this. And the previous pictures that you could see, they were just, let's put it, normal ones. But with this NotebookLM, you can choose the style in which you want to make your presentation or infographic look like. So here, apart from my prompt, I added the information to NotebookLM. Please do it in a newspaper-like style. So this is what I get. And believe me, it makes the lessons with my students more interesting. They are more involved. They read it. It's not just a text that you provide them with. So we can also, just like with other AI tools, ChatGPT or many others, create presentation from documents, and you just need to provide NotebookLM with the right pieces of information. So for example, we can upload a research article, a sustainability report, a policy document, whatever you need, and ask it, create a 10-slide presentation based on this document for secondary school students. And what you get, this is my discovery, my latest discovery. This is the kind of presentation that NotebookLM generates. It's taken a little time. It takes, let's say, 15 to 20 minutes to have it presented this way, but it's worth waiting. This is just one opening slide. On the right, you can see there are more very interesting one. I have asked for 10, and there are really 10 slides provided by NotebookLM. This is another one. I just changed the prompt, asking for a little different style, just to show you today that you can rule the presentation the way you want. And what's important, if you don't like something in the presentation, here you have the magic button change, and you can change the picture, you can change the captions. It's up to you what you want to get. The thing that my students love, and I also do it with them, is to generate a podcast style summary. And this NotebookLM also will do it for you. You only have to tell it in the neat way what you want, what outcome you want. So just to finish and coming back to some of the thoughts, AI doesn't replace teachers. It removes the boring work so teachers can focus on thinking, discussion, and learning. This is what I think it really does. And we as teachers don't have to be afraid of using AI. We just have to control it. We have to control the output that we get. And I always check the sources that I get either from ChatGPT, NotebookLM, or any other AI tools that I use, whether it's correct or not. The future teacher may not spend hours searching for information. The future teacher will design powerful questions and learning experiences. This is why at the beginning I asked you the question, what if AI can reduce the time you spend preparing your lessons. It really does, and it is really helpful. And the quote I like about technology in general is by Bill Gates. Technology is just a tool in terms of getting the kids working together and motivating them. The teacher is the most important. So it is always up to us what we tell our students, how they can use AI with us. It depends what we decide. And I will quote the same two sentences with which I started the presentation. The real risk is not that students will use AI. The real risk is that education will pretend AI does not exist because our students will use it anyway, whether we allow it or not. So maybe it's better to do it together in the way that will be satisfying for both students and teachers. This is all for me. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much, Joanna. That was very informative. If anybody has any questions for Joanna, please put them in the chat and we'll come to them at the end of the session. For now, we're going to move on to Sumaye, who's going to talk about empowering girls through AI.
Thank you. And I'm sharing my screen. It's here. Can you see it?
Yes, your screen is visible.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I would like to talk about the background of this project because in the end of the year 2024, there was a summit about artificial intelligence and women. And many experts involved in this summit. And we were talking about some issues on there is a gap between boys and girls and women and men in this field. And then I decided to conduct a project about it. And I connected with some experts, included Lambert Hagenhout, and he is the chief of data and artificial intelligence at the United Nations. And I collaborated with some NGOs from Turkey. So these projects came through after a while. So it opens to many doors to me, and we gain many international awards with this project. But first of all, I would like to talk about the problem, gender gap in AI. It is a background of the literature of this topic, but it is very important. That's why I want to talk about a little bit in this field. And women are significantly underrepresented in AI across development, research, and leadership roles. And it can cause some problems like lack of diversity in AI development teams leads to enforcement of social and gender biases within AI system. And AI learns from the data that may include stereotypical gender concept, which can cause biased outputs. And biased AI system can negatively impact women's economic opportunities by affecting higher decisions, career progression, or job displacement in female-dominated sectors. So, what is the consequences of gender inequality in AI? AI tools developed without diversity may fail to address the needs of all users groups, and women are less likely to have in AI demanded and digital skills due to underrepresentation in STEM education, lower confidence, or fewer female role models. And there is a critical need to empower women and girls with AI literacy and digital skills, encourage their participation and leadership in STEM and AI fields. And That's why we created this project, AI with Girls Power project, and it aims to enhance AI literacy, digital skills, and students' confidence in technology. So you can see some pictures from the project. And the method was mixed methods, research design, integrating both quantitative and qualitative data collection and analysis. And the research group for this project consists of female students from Arif Çeler Girls Anatolian İmam Hatip High School in Şehzadeler District, Manisa Province. And data were primarily collected through pre and post tests designed to measure changes in participants' knowledge, skills, and perceptions related to AI. And these assessments consist of constructed survey questions covering various aspects of AI literacy, digital skills, awareness of AI ethical principles, and gender equality. Additionally, media production and creative content development and mentorship phases serve as the platform for continuous engagement and implicit data gathering on student interaction and learning process. So what was the findings? The pre and post test analysis show a significant improvement in participants' understanding of machine learning. Their initial explanation, which focus on codes and algorithms, evolved in the more sophisticated data-driven understanding, included concepts like experience prediction and specific learning prediction. And analysis of the pre-post response showed a significant enhancement in participants' understanding of AI ethics and bias. And participants also develop a clear grasp of decision trees. And this leads to more structured understanding of the developer and user responsibilities. And before the project, responses were limited to general roles like AI engineering. After the project's participants could collaborate, become much richer, and they explicitly mention new specific roles such as robotic engineer, AI researcher, like that. And for me, the most important thing from this project was at the pre-test stage, about 80% of participants expressed no interest in AI career, while only about 20% indicated interest. But after we employed this project, this rate increased a lot, and it was as satisfying for me. And we didn't just give students AI literacy classes in this project. We also aimed at to increase their career inspiration, and in the future they involved in this career position. And I think such initiatives play a critical role in enhancing girls' access to digital technologies and contributed meaningfully to development of inclusive educational practices. And there are some pictures from the project. For example, Christina Weber-Gunhan, she is from European Commission and she works on AI. That's why she involved in our projects also. And she wrote some letters to became a role model for our students, your students. And there are some testimonies who involved in our projects. And from students. And he is Lamberhagenhout. Students are watching his video. And Dr. Nika. So my presentation is over there, but I want to share with you more pictures from this project. For example, this was my presentation for Creativity in Schools Award. Can you see my screen right now?
Yep, we can see it's Maya.
For example, the students don't only learn about AI literacy or how they can use this kind of tools. They also created some digital contents about SDGs. They created some podcasts. And these are the pictures from Digital Learning Week, because I was invited to be a speaker to present this project. And this is another international contest about creativity. This picture from Digital Learning Week in Paris. And also, I was invited to the United Nations in Geneva to present these projects. So this is the last picture from invitation later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. In fact, thank you to all of our panelists for such honest and thoughtful perspectives from your own experiences across the world. What was most awesome about, I think, today's conversation was that we haven't really arrived at any particular answer or any solution, and that's the point. We've opened up a lot of different entry points for discussion. We've talked about how AI promises to democratize access to knowledge, but how it also deepens divides between those who have resources and those who don't. We've talked about how AI lets teachers focus on more of the menial tasks while they develop human connection. But what's the biggest takeaway, I think, from today's panelists would be that AI is not something that is happening to education right now. It is something that is actively being shaped by the choices that we make every day. So, for example, when you teach about AI's cultural biases, you're teaching critical thinking. When you're acknowledging AI's environmental costs, you're modeling the kind of honest reckoning sustainability requires. And when you're creating clear guidelines for ethical use, you are teaching students to go beyond policing, and you're building trust and responsibility. Right. So, as the global schools community, wherever we are in the world, we have to keep in mind that we have agency. We don't need to have all the answers about AI right now. We don't even need to make massive shifts towards or away from AI. What we need to do is what our panelists have pointed out today. We need to stay curious, stay critical, and stay committed to our values, right? With that, we are going to go to our question and answer session. And I believe our first question is for Kyla. So you said that whenever we use information from AI, we should cite AI. Can you please tell everybody and the community how exactly you cite AI?
Yeah, so I just shared a few links in the chat actually with how to cite AI for both MLA and APA. It's something that I am stressing with every single one of my students. We are an IB school, so right now our DP students are working on their extended essays, and every single one of them has said, Miss, do I have to cite AI if I do this? Yes, the answer is yes. So there are two links in the chat. I'll share them again so that they're like not being buried. But me like telling you how to cite it is going to take too long. But the basic information that you need is the AI that you're using. So usually that's ChatGPT, Gemini, etc. The version that you're using. So for ChatGPT, it would be GPT. I think we're up to 4 or 5 now. And then the prompt, it will ask you for the full prompt, the date, and usually you can have a link to the chat. And that link is, again, for transparency's sake. That way, if anybody can access that link, they can look at the chat and see what actually was given at the output. Oh yeah, Patricia just shared it in the chat again. So those are the two links, but that will help you figure out what you need. There's a question above, do you know for Chicago? No, but I will find a link for you.
No, but this is great information. I think a lot of people, I mean, it's just recently come up, and you don't usually assume that you have to cite AI, you know? So this is great information. And thank you very much for that. Our next question is for Joanna. How do you upload, what kind of documents can you upload into Notebook LM? And if you upload a presentation, can it turn the presentation into a research paper? So the opposite of what you said.
What I have tried personally, PDF, Word document, and lots of links. So it's up to you what you want to upload there, really. And I would also emphasize, because I could see some questions, it's free, and it's Google app, and it's free, so you don't have to worry that you will have to pay for it. And yes, you can upload your presentation there as one of your sources, and you can ask with the right prompt, Notebook LM, to update it, to make some changes there. And if the result is not what you really satisfied with, you can change the prompt and try again and again until you are satisfied enough with it. So yes, you can do it.
Okay, and then finally, we have a question regarding assessments and clarity. So, a lot of school systems or assessment methods have allowed students to use AI during assessment. What is the general directive on this, or how have you experienced this in your own settings, and what do you do about it? Any of the three panelists can, I guess, take that up.
I can kind of talk about my own experience with that.
Yeah.
We do not allow students to use it during assessments in school. With that being said, there are things that the IB does. For example, again, the extended essay. What we are advising our students to do if they are using some sort of AI for an extended essay, an internal assessment for the IB, or anything like that, especially for papers, is to have some sort of acknowledgement within the essay itself, within the report that they're writing. Usually what that looks like is, I acknowledge that I have used this AI, like ChatGPT, in this way. I have changed it in this way, like basically an AI statement. You can find examples of AI usage statements online. But that is how we are advising students to be honest and transparent about how they are using AI. In terms of in-class assessments, exams, and stuff like that, no, we are not allowing students to use them during that time. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I got kicked off the meeting. I don't know why. I'm back here. So I don't know whether you could hear me answering or not.
No, but you can go ahead now.
Okay, so I've been telling you that you can upload any document you really wish, so like PDF, Word document, or any of your presentation, and also the links from internet that you decide are useful for you to work on together with Notebook LM. And as far as presentation is concerned, you can upload your presentation, PowerPoint presentation, Canva presentation, and ask Notebook LM with the right prompt, with as much detail as you can, as many details as you can, to get the right presentation, the presentation that you will be satisfied with. And of course, with the first result, you may not be that satisfied. You can change the prompt and upload it again. So yes, it can help you with changing your presentation.
Okay, another thing that from my experience, a lot of times, just having it in your guidelines that AI use will be highlighted or flagged or disqualified. That also kind of helps students decide for themselves whether they want to use it at the start or not. Like in high school and Cambridge ONA level examinations, where your essay is not pre-written, but you write it during that time period. In a lot of cases, in school scenarios, you can't control the use of technology or AI. Very clear guidelines helps. And then obviously, if you have bigger pools, like you've got 100 kids giving the same examination, you can pick up on AI use even without having to use tools, because a lot of students will have repetitive answers. So if you end up developing your own set of markers in your rubrics, then you're able to identify AI use and then deal with it accordingly. Right. Another question that we have for all three of the panelists is that with the use of AI, there's this belief that students will not think for themselves, will stop thinking critically, will stop thinking creatively. In your own experiences, has this happened, or have you been able to use AI in ways that actually made students think much more innovatively and in ways out of the box? Anybody can take
So
that.
I can take the question if you don't mind. So I have noticed anything like that with my students, just the opposite. The more creative the prompts they put into AI, different tools, it doesn't have to be ChatGPT or Notebook LM. I don't know whether you know, for example, Suno, Questionwell, MyLab AI, or Diffie. There are many, many other names. Students need to be really creative to put the right prompt and get the result that they really want. So with this infographics or with this presentation I showed you, the students really develop themselves, not lose their skills. This is what I believe is happening.
What about you, Kyla? You seem to work a lot with creative thinking and critical thinking in your library lessons.
I do. So, what I try to remind my students is that AI is a thinking partner. It is not going to give you the answer. So, AI in general is a skill, and it is a skill that we need to teach our students how to use properly, just like any other skill. And when we encourage them to use those creative prompts rather than saying, what is the answer to this question? It's how can I find out the answer? How can I increase my learning and my knowledge? Don't just give me the answer, help me find it. And that is something that I'm trying really hard to teach my students, and to use that skill of AI. And kind of what Johanna was saying was, you have to, once they are creative with the prompts, then they learn how to do it correctly instead of just asking for the answer and taking away that thinking. If they're using the prompts correctly and asking, how can I do this, rather than what is the answer, the more that they practice that, the more creative and the more actual thinking they are going to do.
Okay, that's good. Okay, another question is that we have talked about the ethics of AI, how to use AI, how to use Notebook LM, how to use AI for empowerment and education. We have talked about a lot of aspects of AI, and all of these include using AI. So, in your classrooms, do you have conversations regarding? I know that Kyla mentioned this as well, that different organizations use data centers that use a lot of water, and then this water becomes useless because it's full of toxins. But in your classrooms, when you're using AI, do you have these conversations about AI use? Do you talk about how even students' AI use can impact environment and how to responsibly use AI? Do you have any ideas through which we can kind of have a balance in the classroom where we can use AI for good, but we can also kind of monitor it to make sure that we're not, impacting the environment?
Yeah, absolutely. So part of the unit that I detailed here, when we talked about the environmental aspects, one of their questions at the end. I call them the exit tickets. Their exit ticket for that day was, what else can you ask? Who else can you ask? And basically the goal was to get us to think, or get my students to think, instead of asking AI first, who can I talk to? If I have a question about science, talk to a science teacher. If I have a question about, this specific thing, we have a lot of books in the library. Basically trying to get them to use AI again as a thinking partner, but also just in general as sort of a last resort. There are a lot of resources that you can use first. And my favorite thing to tell them is just Google it. Like you can just Google it. You don't have to ask ChatGPT. You can just Google it and you'll find the answer.
Yeah, it's usually good to have like a list of websites and other resources that we used to use before AI. Like, like for example, Google Maps. I've noticed that a lot of my students or people I work with ChatGPT directions instead of using Google Maps. So you kind of have to remind them that, hey, before AI came along, you had Google Maps. Maybe refer to that before you go to AI. But anybody else? What about you, Joanna or Samay?
If you ask me and my students and the situation in my classroom, we usually talk to each other first before we are to work on some projects, what tools to use. We have a list, just like Kyla mentioned, a list of different tools. It's not only ChatGPT, it's not only Notebook LM, but nowadays these two do everything than other separate AI assistant AI tools do. So it's up to us what we choose, what we decide, what we agree with our students that we should use in this particular project. And it's always the role of the teacher to explain, discuss, listen to our students, and let us decide together what to use and what for in our classroom.
Okay, that's nice. Okay, another question that we have, and a really interesting one, is that on the one hand, you have AI in education and everybody's leveraging AI tools in the classroom. And on the same hand, you have policies regarding technology in classrooms. So, for example, students are allowed to bring their phones into a classroom. So, how do you kind of bridge those things? Like, how do you teach, how do you use AI in a classroom when students can only access tools outside of a classroom?
Okay, so in my school, mobiles are forbidden in the classroom unless the teacher decides it's a good idea to use them for some particular purposes. And what I ask my students to do is not to use their mobiles to provide with these presentations they have prepared at home or with these infographics. What I usually do, I have a special email to which my students can send what they have prepared at home, and this is the source of their presentation there. So they don't have to use mobiles. We can find the solutions. We can ask them, for example, to send what they've prepared via email, and I can display it in the classroom by means of my laptop and monitor on the wall.
That's really good idea. That's kind of like the flipped classroom model, just to do with research and AI at home. Then you send your materials to the class. What else? Especially in the library, Kala, does that impact you? Since, students read on their phones or they have so many different apps on their AI-driven apps on their phone for summaries and character analyses and all of that.
So our school also is phone free. They are not allowed to have their phones within the school building. But all of our students, it's a one-to-one school. So all of our students do have their own laptop or iPad that they bring with them. So it's tricky because in order to access a lot of the class materials, they already are on their laptops, and we aren't able to as easily control what they're using on those laptops or on their own personal devices. But again, it's more just if you have a resource that you access outside of school, send it. send it to me. I love the idea of having an email that you can send that directly to. That's I'm going to write that down, and I'm going to absolutely use that idea. We admittedly, we don't have as much of this problem because we are a one-to-one school and because they do still have their own devices, even if they are not allowed to have their phones.
Okay, and from this, I have another question that this is a policy regarding bringing cell phones to school. What about schools that don't have access to the hardware that you need to use AI? Do you feel like they're at a disadvantage, or do you feel that AI then makes, education a little unfair because you've got a set of schools that are equipped to teach with AI, and then you've got schools that are not equipped? So do you have any comment on that? Any research or feedback or anything you feel that can be done to make AI use more accessible?
It's really tricky. I think personally, based on absolutely no research, I have no research on this at hand. I do think maybe it is a little bit unfair and it is a little bit unequal. But I also think that is something that our students can strive towards. How can we get this into the hands of people who don't have access to it? That's part of having or reducing those inequalities. That's part of our job as educators who are trying to teach these sustainable development goals. Like how can we as teachers teach our students to think about, okay, there are people in this world who don't have access to AI. One, we are in a very privileged position to be able to have access to this. How can we use it in an ethical way? And also, how can we get it into the hands of other students who need it? But that is a really tricky question. I'm interested to hear what the other two have to say.
It is a tricky one, especially that most of us have access to AI and other tools here. But my classroom is not AI tool-based one. We also make like posters, handmade posters. So this is always a way to work it out with other students, other schools participating in our projects. If there are schools that can't really use AI or no, don't have access to it, we agree that, okay, we will stick to the old ways of sharing our ideas. And for example, these handmade posters that we can display on the board and share it with each other, it's still working. So we have to adapt to what we can find in our classrooms. It's a matter of teacher, the ideas, and our conversation with students all the time. AI is not the basis to work.
Maybe I can add something. I think that to debate on this topic is a little bit unnecessary because we know that it's kind of a digital, how can I say, real area for everyone. So I think that everybody could access this technology. But if they don't have this opportunity, we know that they can be how can I say, step back. So that's why we need to talk about the risks at this stage, because a few months ago I had interviewed many people hold in a specific area in this topic, and they told me that educational data is very important for states. And one of them told me that educational data is more important than states' guns stores. It was a shock statement for me. And I think security things is more difficult when it comes to using AI in education. But everybody needs to access this technology. There's no doubt about it.
Okay, at my end, there are schools that don't have access to AI, and there's a lot of disadvantaged communities that don't have access to the hardwares that you need for AI, not even phones, because I work with NGO-based schools for underprivileged kids and all of that. But one thing that we take for granted is that you don't have to use AI in a classroom setting for your students. AI makes a lot of knowledge really available for teachers. Like, for example, professional development courses that would otherwise cost, or just techniques, teaching strategies, different resources, different information. Like, for example, some teachers in Pakistan have used like images of underwater scenarios, or have used virtual reality tools to show students what different places, mountains, the seashore, different things look like. So at the end of the day, you might not need to have AI tools in a classroom in the students' hands. AI can also be used by teachers to expand their own exposure, their data pool, to bring up, like Joanna said, posters, images, generated images that suit your needs. Like you can actually get pictures that students can relate to. Like Kyla said as well, there's so much bias in terms of visuals as well. You can put people of color in pictures that you wouldn't imagine them there before. And then you can use educational resources like that to build creativity and critical thinking and so many things in your classroom. But yeah, for that you do need, you do need administrations setting, coming in. You need communities working together and societies, and even as a community, like on our global schools WhatsApp, we're helping each other out all the time with resources. And on a broader scale, I feel as though if we do that, we can sort of maybe balance out the use of AI and rights to equal education. But with that, we should bring our session to an end. If you have any ending comments, anything you want to say to the audience, you can have the floor, and then we can wrap up. We have some amazing things in the chat. We can compile them, share them. We can share the tools used by our panelists, the resources, the website links, everything. We can share that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for joining, everybody. Thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for staying on for more than an hour. And thank you so much for interacting with all of our panelists.